All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we're going to create this new document and we're creating this for print. And when you design for print, generally you set up the document first. So we're going to go here to File, choose New. And the best practice is to always name your files first. So we're going to call this one Show Flyer because we're going to create a flyer for a rock and roll show. And you'll note that the next area, Photoshop gives you some presets that you can choose. There's presets here for printing on paper. There's presets here that are web and screen oriented. There's a preset here for artboards, which we'll talk about later. And then the last one here is for custom workspaces. So we're going to choose US paper because we're designing for print. When you choose that, it automatically sets up the whole document perfectly for print. It's designed in inches. It's also a resolution of 300. And generally, when you print things commercially, you're going to use the CMYK color space. But the preset here includes the color mode of RGB. That's because it's smartest to work in RGB and change it to CMYK at the end. So when you're designing for print, the final image needs to be in inches at 300 pixels per inch in CMYK. But while designing, you want it to be in RGB. Because remember, RGB is Photoshop's native language. And Photoshop has access to the most tools in RGB color mode. Now, our document that we're creating is not going to be this large. What we're going to do is create what's called a standard quarter-page flyer. And this is really a popular size with printers in the US that do a lot of high-volume printing. And this is used to promote events. And so it's a really popular size. And it's basically 5.5 inches wide, and I'll put these values in really quick so you can see them. 5.5 inches wide and 4.25 inches tall. However, we want to create what's called bleed space. And bleed space is when you design an image a little bit larger than it needs to be, and then you print those out and then just cut off the extra parts around the edge. And the reason you do this is that, as you've seen probably just printing even at home or at school, that when you print a document full page size, it's got a white border all the way around it. Well, commercial printers have the exact same problem. So bleed space allows you to create a larger document than you actually need, and then at the end you just cut off what you don't need. So it's a great way to solve that problem of those white borders that are pretty much unavoidable in any printer. To do that, we're just going to create a document that's larger than we need. So generally, I add 1/4 inch to each side of my document. So for the width, there's a left and a right side. 1/4 inch on the left and 1/4 inch on the right equals 1/2 inch that I need to add to my document. So 5.5 plus 1/2 is 6 inches. For the height, I need the same thing. I need 1/4 inch on the top and bottom. So I'm going to add 0.5 to this value. So instead of 4.25, it's going to be 4.75. Now, for some people, when you're really design oriented, sometimes things like math and numbers don't connect so well with you. Over time, you'll get better at doing this kind of math, especially adding quarters and halves, because it's just so common in the industry. So don't worry about it if the math gets in your way right now. Eventually, it'll become second nature. So to create our document, we just click OK, and boom, we've got a brand new Photoshop document, exactly the size we need it, but it has that extra 1/2 inch. And also note that it's in RGB, and our final image we need in CMYK. We're going to talk about how to have Photoshop show us the information as if we're working in CMYK, and also how we can easily preview that bleed space that we just created.